there's the first time I've seen this lovely piece of machinery, and now I have to figure out how to not beat it up while I lay it down. I think I'll get a big comforter, roll it onto its side, get the rest of the packing off it, and carry on. I built myself a little stand for it. I have this dolly. It's quite a large one. I use it in the shop to move sheets of plywood around stuff. I have a stand that sits on the dolly, so I didn't feel like buying another, so it's kind of big for this, but I made this stand, and Lisa and I just picked up the Outdrive and set it down in there. I made it so the skeg goes down in that hole because I measured how high the boat, the center line of the shaft is off the ground, and if I kept this up on top of the dolly, it was going to be up a little too high. Now I will get into removing all this packing that came from the factory, and I put steel wool in there because I didn't want mice crawling up through the exhaust and into the engine over the winter, which I don't know if that would have happened, but I made darn sure it wouldn't happen. The 42, it's a 42 degree tilt on this. It's available 52, 42, or 32, and 52 would have worked fully tilted up. The drive would come up above the swim platform, but it wouldn't hit it. However, if you ever had the drive turned and put it up all the way, it would pound it into the underside of the platform. That'd be a really bad day. So 42, the drive can be turned, tip it, nothing bad will happen. Well, it's time to put the drive on. First thing I have to do is put some waterproof grease on a number of places that they mention in the installation instructions, so I guess I'll start with that. Tell you to grease the inside of the U-joint bellow. I assume the only place they can be talking about is right at this outer edge where it's going to contact the surface here. The rest of it's way out there, and I wouldn't want anything contacting the bellows while it's running, so. And grease all these studs. I think that'll do the spline. And then the one last place, they tell you to grease this surface here, which I already did what it mates to, but I guess a little more can't hurt either. There. Now I'll get all the slime off my fingers so I can handle this without making a mess. So, swing that up because I'm just a little too close. Oh, wow. Yes, got to remember this shifter, and thankfully, I was supposed to keep an eye on that. I forgot, but it slid right through the hole where it's supposed to go, so that's good. Now we're getting close to where, well, we're not there yet, I don't think, but soon splines have to engage. I think my life would be simpler if I was to, I'm not sure what. Maybe I can just lift the front of the drive up a bit. Nothing's moving. I think the simplest thing I could do would be to raise the front of the dolly up just a little bit. Which I think I can do by just slipping a piece of plywood under it. Alright, so I put about an inch of plywood under the front casters on the dolly to get this lined up better, and I also put the outer prop on. Obviously the inner one's not going on, just loosely, but it's on there so I can turn the shaft. And now I will see if I can push it forward and get it to come together. Okay, I think it moved a little more. Ooh, that's encouraging. I'm a little off to the side. That's encouraging. Oh yeah, things are looking good. Just not get carried away. Make sure shift cable's riding through there okay. And all the bolts are lining up. The gasket thingies are all in there where they belong. I think I can push it home. Well, that's very encouraging. I think now I just need to put on the nuts and bolts and draw it together. I can see now it would be smart to draw all the nuts in before you start drawing the unit tight together, because as it gets closer, this gets closer and there isn't room for everything. So now if this was lowered, it wouldn't be in my way. That would be helpful. I'm going to use a wrench on that top one because I don't want to scratch things. Yes, if I had brought all the nuts in as far as, you know, to the surface before I drew the drive together, my socket and U-joint would fit on. But now that I've got the drive together and this other nut's out at least half an inch from where it could be, it makes it too snug to put the U-joint on without scratching up the side of the drive, and I don't want to do that. So 1/6 of a turn at a time with an open end wrench. So they tell you to torque these bolts, nuts on the studs here, first time all the way around to 25 foot-pounds, and then to go back and take them up to 50. Well, now I guess it's time to go get the torque wrench and try to see if that'll work. Alright, I have my torque wrench set to 25 foot-pounds. I think most people would just throw this on and make them tight, but the one thing about it, it's supposed to have a 5-year warranty, and they were good enough to say they won't start the warranty until I put the boat in service. But that said, I'm quite confident that if I have any warranty issues ever, they'll definitely take a really close look at the installation and see if there's any way that they can decide that it was faulty installation. And so I'm going to do whatever I can to do it the way they tell me to. There we go, 50 pounds. All right, we're good. It's torqued on, so now the next thing I need to do is get the trim cylinders pins in, and the next thing would be to hook up the shift, but I'm not going to hook it up because I'm going to get all the electronic stuff calibrated. I don't know what the defaults are. I don't want it to try to move things where they weren't meant to move, so I'm gonna kind of, when I get to that point, which I'm not there yet, I haven't got the throttle or the shifter connected at this end, so I can kind of figure out what the travel is and figure out where everything's going before I have it actually hooked up and maybe break something. So, but yeah, now I'll get set up to get these trim cylinders connected. All right, so I've strung these up a little higher again. I'm gonna try to get my dolly out from under it. I think it will just, I'm going to have to tip the drive up a bit because the skeg is down in the dolly, but my hope is I can just do that right there, and then I have a piece of cardboard here, a piece of plywood, just to, oh, forget that, it doesn't hit the ground. So I have the pins and the cotter pins, and they go so you can put the cotter pin down through. That's good. Now if it's anything like a Mercruiser, if you let the weight go down on the one cylinder, it'll just push the other one out, so all right, I'm going to take this pin out and put the other one in first because it's just about a 1/4 inch farther extended, and there's no way that I can change that. So that pin's in. Now maybe the weight of the drive will balance it. Yeah, so yeah, note to self, start with the one that's up higher first. Then the cotter pins drop down through, 1, 2, and I would think the next thing I should do is bend those. There, look good. That should get us down the lake real nice. I think I'm going to go ahead and put the props on. I'm torn. Part of me doesn't really want them down here because I know from experience when we get a downpour, it splashes up sand and stuff off the gravel driveway, but I think I'd rather have the props getting stuff on them than my splines, shaft and seals and everything, so I think I'd rather put the props exposed to the weather. So the first thing they tell you on that, and I know I've been warned by my prop guy about this too, is grease all this up good, because if that prop gets corroded or whatever and frozen to this shaft, it can be a big time getting it out. So he said make sure you grease up the shafts really well. One thing is, I took a look before I put it together, and there's no grease nipples on the U-joints, so That used to be something I used to do, if not every year, at least every other year, was pull the Outdrive and grease the U-joints, but that no longer needs to be done. And on the Volvos, you don't have to split the lower unit to change the water pump impeller. That's up on the engine. So, yeah, I don't know when or why I'll have this drive off. I'm sure I should at some point, if for no other reason than just to keep it from becoming permanently attached, but I don't know that there's any service reason to take the drive off. Maybe I'll learn something I'm not aware of right now, but that's what my thinking is at this point. Alright, I just went and checked the installation instructions, which are a PDF on my computer, and yeah, they tell you to tighten this to 44 foot-pounds. Now that said, you use this tool, which I bought on Amazon, but it looks exactly the same as the one they're telling you to use. And I don't, oh yes, well that's the other thing. If I didn't put this back on, I could click it into reverse or forward for this prop, but I'm not pulling that off, so I need to put a block of wood to stop the propeller from spinning. Luckily, I have lots of blocks of wood right close by, so there we go. But yeah, 44 foot-pounds, I can't imagine getting anywhere close to that with this wrench. Okay, I think I might have just hit the end of moving forward. Now it's just a case of making it as tight as I can. I think that's it. Alright, yep, embedded the blade into the board a little bit. Alright, I'll go get the second prop. Seems like everything fits. That's always a good sign. On the reviews, they said this wrench was a little iffy for the quality and the accuracy, and I see what they mean. I'm going to see if I have a socket in my toolbox that will fit this, and I can actually use a torque wrench and a ratchet. I believe the nut for this is a 30 millimeter. I'm going to buy myself a 30 millimeter socket, but for today, my 1.25 inch is a little sloppy, but it'll work. So I can use the torque wrench on it. They tell you to take this one to 55 foot-pounds. No possible way am I getting 55 foot-pounds with that little tool, even if it did fit on. 55, right there. All right. There we go. That was quick and easy. Hey, look at that. They turn. I don't hear any scrapey sounds or anything. There we have the installed Duo-Prop Outdrive. And I'm very hopeful and confident that it's going to power this boat really nice down the waterways. And awful expensive though. If I ever find myself a rock, I have 2 props to fix instead of 1, so I'm going to do my best to avoid doing that.